Hello and welcome to the January 8th, 2020 Conservation Commission meeting. Wish everybody a happy New Year. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up is going to be a NOI continuance for 21.5 West Sutton Road.
Make a motion to waive the reading of 21.5 West Sutton Road.
Did we read this in?
I don't think so.
Time ago. Yeah,
Within our last meeting.
We read it at the last meeting.
Isn't this
yeah,
when we
we
didn't
did
open
at
the
the
public
last
hearing because he
meeting.
didn't?
Yes.
And I think at this one because he had to redo the notification.
Yeah, so it needs to be read in.
Yeah, we need to read this in.
So I'm going to waive
Yeah,
my
shouldn't we
waiving
read it?
of the reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. The Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, December 18th, 2019 at 7 o'clock p.m. Sutton Town Hall, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, Mass. The purpose of this hearing is to review a notice of intent submitted to the Conservation Commission by Stephen Venicasa, Worcester, Mass. The project consists of constructing a single-family house, septic system, associated landscaping within 100 feet of the buffer zone, map 8, parcel 35 and 21.5 West Sutton Road, Sutton, Mass. This notice is publicized in accordance with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, commonly known as the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Sutton Wetlands Protection Bylaw.
You want to correct the date on that?
Yeah, and that was, so yeah, we'll call it 1/8/20 at 6:30. Okay, do you have any other permits pending with any boards, any of the boards?
Well, at this time, we are working with the Board of Health. We've had one scheduled hearing and we have another meeting scheduled.
Okay.
Eventually, we will be in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we realize that, this is the first step. I spoke with the secretary of the building department, and she basically told me that they would prefer that we go through Board of Health and Conservation prior to coming, in for any zoning waivers, things like that.
That's understandable.
So that's the direction
Nothing
we've
planning
taken.
on this, right? Nothing planning?
No.
Okay.
Doesn't require any board approval. It's an existing lot.
We have DP number.
Yes,
All right.
919.
Perfect. Okay.
Well, good evening. My name is Robert Murphy with Murphy Associates Environmental Consultants, and I'm here representing Stage 1 developers, investors, Stephen Venicasa, to develop a single-family house, septic system, and associated landscaping grading within the buffer zone of Lake Singletary. The project will also involve a well. The well is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. However, it is within, the entire lot is within the 200-foot zone around the lake. So essentially everything on the property is covered under your, either the 310 CMR or your bylaw. The intent in the original meeting that we had with the Board of Health is to repair the septic system on the property. We have provided the Board of Health with additional information that was requested. So we'll have another hearing on that. They basically wanted additional information relative to the retaining wall and the grading. Right now there's an existing house, so single bedroom house on the property that's in disrepair. What we propose to do is to redevelop a single bedroom house. Be more modern, but it will be restricted by a deed restriction to a single bedroom. The septic system, on the other hand, you're required by Title V law that the septic system has to be a minimum size of 2 bedrooms. So it's actually bigger than it has to be, but that's because the law requires it. And because initially we had proposed to put a tight tank on the property, and the agent, who's no longer with the Board of Health, but she basically explained the regulation being that you have to prove that you cannot put a septic system on a lot before they will give you a permit for a tight tank. DEP doesn't like tight tanks. So we took a look at the soil, we did an evaluation, water table and all that, and we determined that using innovative technology, alternative designs with a Presby system, it's 40% smaller than a regular system. So we were able to fit a septic system on the design. So the plan you have before you has the house with a septic system. Anyone who's familiar with a tight tank, you really don't want one if you don't have to have one. So that's a plus for the property. And when we determined that, then we had to figure out, okay, you know, we could put a septic system in. Now we have to figure out where we could put a house. So looking at the area where the house is down on the lower side of the property now, we figured we'd go with a house in that area. And that requires, you know, permits from, as I say, everybody, Board of Health, Zoning, Conservation Commission. The lot, as it is right now, it's you know, it slopes down to the lake. The entire lot drains into the lake. So the idea is that anywhere where you can infiltrate water, say from the rooftop, that type of thing, you could meet stormwater management by putting on-site drainage. So the idea is to have the rooftops drain into subsurface drainage system. The septic system itself is actually a subsurface drainage system as well. All of your well water, instead of going into a sewer and out to the ocean, goes back into the ground. So it's an infiltration system. Because it's near a lake, near wetlands, it has to meet Title V requirements so that you have a good treatment of the fluid before it enters into the water table. And that's why you see the retaining walls, because it has to be raised up. The groundwater was found to be approximately 24 inches to 30 inches below the surface at the annual high groundwater. I did find evidence that there was, prior to the road being constructed, the groundwater on this property was actually lower. But something to do with the way the drainage was done, or some drainage across the street or whatever. This property now receives a lot of surface water runoff. And because of that, the septic system has to be raised, meet that requirement. But that's basically it. We would like to develop the lot with a single bedroom house, and the Presby septic system as shown on the plan. And, you know, I might add that, you know, there may be some additional information requested by the Board of Health, so this is a kind of an ongoing situation. With that, I'll give it back to the board and answer any questions you might have.
Brandon?
Yes, sir, thank you. Bob, can you give us a just quick rundown of what waivers you might be looking for with zoning?
Pretty much, because it's an existing non-conforming lot, you have to get a special permit relative to the size of the lot. Also, the setback requirements for the distance, you know, side yard setbacks, rear yard setbacks. In Sutton, it's 50 feet in the front and rear. So the water would actually be considered the rear. So the house, essentially we're looking for all the setbacks for the zoning, CBA.
Okay.
There's also a waiver, if you need to know additional, there's also waivers requested, we filed a local upgrade approval with the Board of Health because we are, have the septic system is within 20 feet of the house. It would also be within, we've actually built the retaining walls pretty close to the property lines, and the septic system would be adjacent to the property lines. And also, local upgrade approval because the septic system is within 100 feet of the well. So those are all being reviewed by the Board of Health. And those are typical of a repair.
Okay, so, in respect to the Board of Health variance with the septic system being within 20 feet of the house, and I see that the leaching field is just outside of the 50-foot radius for number 21 West Sutton Road.
50 foot is the minimum
Yeah,
requirement.
the absolute, so you just meet it, but just like by inches, it looks like.
Well, again, when I originally looked at the property, as I mentioned earlier, I was pretty sure this would be a tight tank site. However, I was required to try to, see if I could fit a septic in, and it did. Yeah, it was surprising to me, but it meets the Title V local upgrade approval requirements.
Okay. And I'm just talking out loud here, given the way that the houses and the septic systems and the wells along West Sutton Road have worked is that most of the septic systems are on the lake side, the lower side, so they gravity feed, and the wells are up by the road. This is a little different than
No,
usual.
the well is up by the road.
Well is up by the, so the septic system is also gonna be up closer on the uphill side.
Well, we tried to keep it as far away from the lake as possible. And also, there is a well on the adjacent property to the west. That well is quite close to the lake. That's way down at the bottom, so.
I don't know, I'm thinking out loud here.
Yeah, we have,
Would
in
it
order
be-
to
would it
meet the
be-
Title V requirements, the septic.
Yeah, I know, but would it be wiser to transpose the house and the septic system? The house to be a little further away from the water?
Well, I wouldn't use the term wise, but, it's certainly an option. The idea is that anyone who's trying to develop and sell, waterfront property, they wanna have, their request, the owner's request was to have the house near the water.
All right, so based on this picture here, I took a picture of the existing structure from about where the wall is. Can you point out on that picture about where the new house will be compared to where the existing house is? Is it
It's
gonna be
about-
closer?
Let me reference the plan quickly. The existing house is in this area right here. So the house would be like half inside this house.
Mm-hmm.
Half the house would be inside, and the front of the house would be down in this area here. So this wall would essentially split the house.
Okay.
And we're
I'm
talking
just-
about a
I'm-
24,
I'm not critiquing, I'm just trying to get an idea of what we're
Be
dealing
about-
with here.
12 feet behind that wall and 12 feet in front. So it's like a 24-foot wide house.
Okay.
That wall essentially would split where the house is proposed.
The yard between the house and the lake has been growing up. It's grown up with woody vegetation at this point. When was the last time that anyone was utilizing that place?
Well, they kind of mowed it, a couple of years ago. But pretty much everything you're looking at there is invasive. Those plants are all invasive.
I got,
All
that
that area
that
there.
hasn't been mowed in 5 years, I mean,
Longer than that,
at least.
at least 5 years, could be 10.
Well, I saw evidence that had been mowed,
Okay.
within 2 years.
Okay, so now into some of the
And I
more.
also found the lawnmower that they use, it's in the cellar.
Covered with
Yeah,
that.
the door was open.
Yeah, lawnmower's in.
Okay, so now that we've established some of the bigger stuff, there's a lot of vegetation, there's a lot of big trees on this site. which is a good thing, but I also noticed they're really tall with a lot of other houses very close to them. So I'm kinda weighing the environmental benefit with the danger to the houses, which is, you know, something we have to do.
These trees are a danger not just to the potential house to be on the lot, but you're right, they're a danger to the neighbors.
Are they,
So-
are
so-
they pines?
Yeah, there's a
They're
lot of tall
straight
pines.
80, 90-foot tall pines.
Yeah, let's see if I can show you here.
That old strip. right
Tonight's a
there's
good
lot of
night to
pines.
test them.
Take a look at that.
Yeah, that's scary.
They like to grow up about 80 feet and then they snap off and hit the house. So the idea is, we had shown on the plan, our intention is to, replace the trees with, smaller trees, but similar, evergreens, that type.
Well, that's the question is, how many trees are coming down? And do you have a replanting plan? Because what I'm seeing here is a lot of grading going down from the gravel parking area to the septic system and house, which looks to me like it's gonna have to require clear cutting the whole lot the way that the grading's shown here.
Yeah, Plan 2 shows red oaks, white pines, mountain laurel, more or less along the property line to replace the large trees that are essentially, on this lot, any tree that's deemed to be a health risk is gonna be removed. That's essentially how you work it. They don't intend to remove any more trees than they have to.
Okay, then have you consulted an arborist to make that ascertain which trees are the health hazards?
I have a degree in arboriculture from the University of Massachusetts.
Are you a Massachusetts
feel-
certified arborist
I
though?
used to be, I'm no longer practicing arborist.
The commission's
But I can
policies
tell
do
you,
you-
there are several trees on the property based upon 40 years of experience.
I wouldn't doubt it, but
However,
the procedure is
If
to
you
get
would
us
like to have a certified
yeah.
arborist, we will,
That would make everyone's
bring him
life
in.
a lot easier.
I have no problem with that, but, it became real obvious to me, when we were surveying the property that there was certain trees that would have to be removed.
Yeah, so just a plan on, in the letter from the arborist would be good. Okay, is this house gonna have a full foundation? Is it gonna have a
Full foundation.
full foundation?
Full foundation.
Okay.
And, the intent is to keep the floor above the water table so that you could have normal foundation drains, but you would not have.
So
Try
are
to stay
there
away from-
foundation drains shown in this plan? And where would they discharge?
They would discharge, to the, down to the green area. But it's pretty much, building code that we, we have to have
So
a
can
foundation.
can you show those?
Yeah, we could add that.
Right,
If
now
that's
with the house being so close to the septic system, what's the regulation on having a drain that close to the leaching field, given that the house is down gradient? And-
Well, the requirement is generally, you try to keep any foundation drains a minimum of 20 feet away, because that's where the septic system is, a minimum of 20 feet away. However, because of the close proximity here, we have to have an impervious barrier. And that's a Title V issue where you design the impervious barrier so that it does not allow groundwater and/or any drains to come in contact with Title V.
Yeah, with Title V effluent, right, so
Right.
I think that's a big concern of mine there with it,
So
to put in
you look at
foundation
the
drains.
4-foot level below your lowest, in this case, Presby tube, and your plastic barrier. It's a 40 mil plastic barrier.
I get a feeling that Board of Health will probably wanna know about that too, so,
Oh, it's there. It's part of the local upgrade approval.
so where is, it's a pretty busy plan, I
It's
apologize.
just inside the retaining wall, and if you look at the detail, there's a couple of places on the detail where it shows the sure if you have sheet 2, but
We don't.
it has an impervious barrier detail. And that,
I have it, yeah, I
That-
have that, cotton barrier.
essentially follows Title V.
I'm looking for a drain here.
I have
Am I-
septic
am I
sheet
just
number
blind?
2. Sheet 1.
The drain,
Yeah.
there's a drain inside a retaining wall. There would be a drain.
Can we show it on the plan a little more clearly?
We'll add it.
Thank you.
We'll add it to the foundation.
Excellent.
Again, it's when you're that close to the house, you have to have the impervious barrier.
Okay. I noticed that, there's a lot of grading between the gravel parking area and the house, but I'm looking for some kind of walkway going down to the house. Is there I don't see it. Is there gonna
Well,
be
it was
some
graded.
stairs or?
No, the property, essentially on the upper half of the property is graded pretty close to the existing grade. It's leveled out. And there is a walkway there.
Well, the walkway now is in pretty rough shape.
Right, but the walkway will be replaced. But if you look at the way the grading goes along the side where the water line and the electric line is, that's where the walkway is gonna be.
I don't see a walkway on the plan
The
though.
walkway's not on there, it's just graded to have a walkway.
Can we put a walkway on the plan?
We'll add it. Like I say, what we did
Thank
was we graded it so that you don't necessarily need a walkway, but
So
we'll show,
it'll be over grass?
it could be grass.
Okay.
It's graded not to be too steep. However,
I mean,
We
if
can
it's gonna
add
be
walk-
over grass, it's over grass, that's fine, but if you,
Yeah.
most situations, I see a staircase, a set of stairs going down.
that was more or less left up to, potential buyer.
Okay. How
They
about,
may, people don't like necessarily having a concrete walk, so
yeah,
they may want a stone walk, but we'll show a walkway.
how about, infiltration of stored water coming from the new house roof? And which way is the gravel parking area pitched, and where will that water go?
Part of it'll be pitched more or less half of it'll go into back into the street, because there is a drainage system in the road. And then this.
Well, we've
small
had
amount
this
of it-
issue
small
on,
amount of it can,
we've had that issue on Manchog Road before, and the rule, if I remember correctly, is you cannot discharge new impervious to the street. Now, there is a kinda sorta area to park, cause I was able to park my car, but it's pretty tight. This one's about 15 feet wide. Is that gonna be enough room?
it's pretty much, what I'm showing, the grading is pretty much what's there now is what they're gonna, keep the grading. They may put like recycled asphalt pavement, the wrap, or something there to stabilize it. But I'm not really changing the grading in the area where the parking is now.
Yeah, but I think it might be wise to check in with Matt Stencil on that, like we did on Manchog Road.
It's a bylaw, you can't discharge the water into the street.
Well, if it's discharging there now, it's existing. In other words, we're not gonna change it. Whatever it is, it is.
But right now, it's what, gravel, and but then you're gonna put in recycled asphalt, it
Recycled asphalt
might
is-
change the
is
nature of
considered to be
things.
pervious
I-
pavement.
In most cases, if you keep existing grades and you just, like, it's an improvement, let's say in situ, in place, it's usually exempt, but we've had this issue before, so I'm thinking about what highway would think about it. How about the roof? How about the roof?
The roof,
What can we do with the roof?
we can put that into, subsurface chambers.
Okay. Almost there. The area, anything going on with the retaining wall, the stairs, improvements to that? Are you gonna be adding any docks or anything like that?
We added a temporary dock to the plan. It should be shown on the one you have. The retaining wall is in good condition.
I have Oh, yeah, on sheet one, okay.
We added that to the application just to have it,
Well, that's
in
good,
case they want it.
that's good.
Um,
The wall looks like it's in pretty decent shape.
The wall's in good shape. And there's a stairway that goes down. My assumption would be they may wanna put the dock near the stairway, but that's up to them. It does walk down toward the water.
So again, the yard has grown up with woody vegetation. I know there's a lot of invasives. Is the plan to turn that back into lawn all the way down to the wall?
Not necessarily. No.
Okay.
We
Do-
could,
go
again,
on.
with the
Is there any room for
with
a
the commission's
vegetated buffer?
permission, we would have a more or less grade it the same, but just, I have no problem with putting shrubs along the water, protect that area.
Can you come up with a plan for that?
Yeah, there is.
There's a form of mitigation?
Well, the mitigation was shown, to plant shrubs.
Along the sidelines, which is a common thing that people do along the lakes in order to not lose their water view. When the most efficient use of plantings really is to create that vegetated buffer to increase water quality and create a little bit of wildlife habitat. So if you're willing to put like some
I
kind of
have no
staggered row of high bush blueberry or something along the top of the wall, that would go a long way towards mitigation, what you're doing here.
The
Is-
house is shown 42 feet off the water. So let's say you had a 10-foot area with shrubs. You'd still have over 30 feet, of area, which would be plenty of room.
And you wouldn't lose a water view if you're just putting in
Still,
shrubs.
there'd be plenty of room to have a table and some chairs. So I will add, as part of the mitigation program, a 10-foot shrub section along the water. along the water.
I'm gonna write that down. Okay, that's
It's
it for
up
me,
there.
that's it for me, thank you.
Right, Bill?
So definitely, I see an improvement over what's there, cause I try to remind people that right now there's some form of a cesspool there, I'm assuming, right? So if someone were to use that house as is, it's not a good situation. So I like the upgrade, I think it's gonna be a tremendous upgrade to the lake. I for one, and you probably know this, do not like big trees next to homes, especially on windy nights. And I will never ever tell someone they can't take a tree down by a house, so I would rather see those trees come down, cleaned up, the ones in reason, and do mitigation along the lake. So
I'm working on 3 houses right now, 2 in Lexington and 1 in Sturbridge, where huge trees came down this winter and destroyed the houses. And in 1 in Sturbridge, it fell along the length of a ranch house and crushed the entire house. So fortunately, there was no one home at the time.
well, I'm in the insurance business, and you're gonna start seeing the insurance companies sending recommendations out for big trees to be taken down along houses coming in the future. So I mean, you got some work to do on the plan, but I definitely think it's an improvement. And I just have a question, is he building this for himself, or is he gonna build it
No,
to
this
sell?
is, the stage 1, they buy distressed properties. That's not all they buy, but they do buy distressed properties. And I've worked on a few of them for them, and I can tell you that, when they're completed and they're done, the neighbors love them.
Oh, I'm sure. I would think the abutters are gonna love this.
Absolutely not.
So I have a question for you while that's being brought up, because this often comes up, and it's a little outside of conservation. The abutters have mentioned they don't like it. So stage 1, have they made an offer to the abutters to buy the property as is with the full profit as the house would be built and done?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so my suggestion would be stage 1, make an offer, what the final price is the house completely built, to any abutters who don't want it. Cause I often get bothered by abutters coming in and complaining cause they don't want something changed, but they don't own it. So I try to make that clear, so if the finished product's $700,000, he could offer to the abutters, and butter on the left and butter on the right could each spend $350 and buy the house. And you wouldn't have to do any more work, and we wouldn't have to do any more work, and they'd be happy, cause it wouldn't be a house. But when people don't own something, I have a real problem stopping anyone from doing something unless they own the property. So in this case, I'm all for it, and I think it's good.
The applicant has a vested interest in developing this property for his own particular reasons of, making it worth more and then selling it, they're investors, that's what they do. So, I will, talk to Mr. Benincasa and this other fellow, Mr. Murphy, who's, trustee. And, they can come up with a legitimate number of what they anticipate and certainly make it available.
Well, I definitely recommend that, because when someone doesn't own it, I just think it's a good thing to point out there, because sometimes people don't wanna see development, I totally respect that. In a perfect world, I respect that, but we don't all have, so if you wanna write the check for it, then to me that goes a long way. Other than people coming in and saying they don't want a house there, doesn't go too far to me, so.
Well, that's certainly a legitimate, point to make, and I'll bring that up with the applicant.
Joyce?
Oh, what Bill just said, I don't think it's any of our business, but
No, but I just don't wanna have a meeting, I can already see the eyes from people that, I don't wanna back and forth on something when some of the stuff is out of our
well,
control.
they have a right to
A-
add their
oh,
2 cents.
Absolutely, absolutely, but I
um,
just thought I'd throw the point out there, cause maybe they didn't think of it.
But it isn't our purview to do that.
Mike?
Well, it's basically, and I've been involved in this for a number of years, but it's basically, the developer or the homeowner, if they wanna stay with it, they have to follow the regulations of the DEP, Title V, all the boards, whatever, and they have to follow them.
Mm.
And if they do, so be it, if people have an issue with that they can come to the boards and
Sure.
take it up with their.
I'm all for listening to people, I just
All
wanna
right,
throw
Mike.
that out there.
Yep. Mike? Whoops. Thank you. Most of my concerns were covered by Brandon. My only feedback to you would be our zoning regulation allows you by right to increase by 30% from the existing footprint without going to ZBA, as long as you're no more non-conforming. You should at least understand that when you go to ZBA, because to go beyond that, you're gonna have to have a really good reason, I believe. I don't wanna speak for another board. So I don't know how much more non-conforming you are than what is existingly there. Do you know what that number is, including the deck?
We're trying to meet
So you
that
have a house and a deck.
What we're trying to do is meet that number, and we're actually,
So you're right at it.
we
You used,
prepared for the ZBA, we actually have our application ready for the ZBA, but, I can tell you that we are flexible in the size of the house. What we're showing you here on this plan is the largest house that could possibly ever be built on this property. So
is it 30% greater than what's there now?
it's
So if you take the
slightly
house and the
greater,
deck-
right. So if the zoning board of appeals says they'd like to have a smaller house, then we won't have to come back to you with a smaller house.
So let me say it to you this way.
It won't be bigger.
I respect our zoning tremendously. I would need to know that number for me to be okay with this project, because for you to go beyond that with an existing condition and all these variances that you need, septics, wells, I can go on and on, I wanna understand those numbers. And you would have to have a very good reason why you're gonna increase it more than 30%, cause you can do that by right. And that's the way our zoning's written, so that means.
That's why we have the zoning. The Board of Appeals, we may increase it by 30%, but that's up to the zoning board of appeals.
Right, they can, I'm not disagreeing, but I
That's-
just wanna understand, you must be close, I mean,
I'm
what
not
looks
sure
like
if
what,
I understand.
so there's a house
your
there now, right?
question.
And there's a deck, I can see it in the picture.
Yeah.
Whatever that area is, you can increase it by 30%. We'd be within our zoning.
We don't expect to increase it by 30%, I can tell you that. And I will have some better numbers for you, because we're in the process of preparing,
It's not square footage of house, Bob, either, it's the footprint. So if you go 3 stories, that's not what you can increase the footprint by 30%.
They anticipate, having a 2-story building.
Right, but that doesn't come into play for my conversation.
No,
That
it's-
might be for
You're
somebody
looking at
else.
the footprint and looking at a potential 30%, where I will have some numbers for you.
And let me just say this, the intent behind it is so on these small non-conforming lots, you don't end up with big houses. And that's not too much to ask, and I don't wanna say what's going on out in the audience, but I know as somebody from the town, on these smaller lots, it usually ends up being the best thing for the development of the lot also, because it just makes sense. So just for me, just, they're at,
We're not gonna, they're not gonna build a
right,
large,
so,
big house.
so then, this is a good project, like, so we have zoning rules and regulations that we all have to go by. And it sounds like this project's within that.
It's a one-bedroom house, so I
Yeah.
mean, it's not gonna be a McMansion, you know?
Well, that's important to
What
me,
they
that's what
want
I
is a
wanna
moderate-
understand, I think some of the people here,
moderate
that's what
price.
they
It's
wanna
not a-
understand.
It's intended to be a moderate-priced house, because it's a moderate lot.
And if that's the case, then I have no issues with it.
Okay.
Zach?
I don't have any questions right now.
Nicole?
All set.
There's two things, I live on Lake Singletary, there's two things that this road gets very congested at times with cars parking on the side of the road, so if you could maybe allow for extra parking at the top. I know Brandon had said there's only room for one car or something.
What they're proposing is about 15 feet wide.
Right, I mean, in those winds in there, it's dangerous. The other thing is, I still fail to understand why the town sewer ends at the Millbury-Sutton line. And it's been explained to me 3 times, and I still don't understand why that town sewer ends at the Butler Farm. I have no idea how and why that was engineered that way.
Because the town of Millbury was going to charge a whole lot of money, and the
Yeah,
town.
but the betterments get charged back to the property owners. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, you weren't around because you're half my age, so.
Well, yeah, I'm sure, but
So you weren't around when they
so
were doing that.
is it a pipe sizing problem still?
No,
They can't-
it's an issue between the town of Millbury, and they would not extend it into Sutton. The same thing on Singletary Ave, because when that development was proposed behind Bob Lodge's house, they were going to hopefully bring the sewer up Singletary Ave, and when the Christmas Tree Farm was gonna be over there, that development, they were gonna bring it up, but it was the town of Millbury that would not cooperate, because it goes through there.
I really think with all the rehabs and new construction homes that are bound to happen in that stretch, I think that should be revisited with the town of Millbury, because we're putting septics, every other lot is like 50 feet, 56 feet.
Small lots.
It's just tight, that's how it is, they're camp lots, you know. Anybody from the audience on this would like to speak? Okay, your name and address?
Patricia Grandy and 23 West Sutton Road. I'm in a butter.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Grande.
Thank you.
So many things wrong with this, I don't even know where to begin. The groundwater over there is a lot higher than everybody realizes. Mr. Wentz, you don't realize there's no septic over there, no cesspool, no nothing. There's never been any water, there's no well, there's nothing. It's been like that for years. I've lived next door for 20 years, I know what it's like over there. The grade is, there's no grade from the street down. I don't even know how they're gonna get trees out of there. I'm not gonna let them go on my property to take the trees down, so there's a lot of things wrong. You guys need to go look at it yourselves.
I've seen the lot, I'm familiar with it. It's had a for sale sign in the window for a long
A lot
time.
of things wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sure that my other neighbors will say the same stuff. It's just,
Well, I mean, there's so many
I
variances
just need
for a
your
reason.
your
My
name.
name is Catherine Longo, I'm across the street,
Okay, what's your address?
20 West Sutton Road.
Okay.
So that area is very congested, I have a difficult time coming out of my driveway.
Mhm.
Even having construction there is gonna be dangerous. That's our main concern right there.
Mhm.
But not only that, but their well and septic is abutting and right on their property
Yep.
line.
That's honestly, we can't tell them no. I don't like the idea, but there's no other way. It's a pre-existing non-conforming lot, right?
Right.
So
In order
They
to do
have the-
construction, they would have to go on her property,
They
on
have-
his property.
they can't by law. They have the right to repair.
Repair something that's existing.
there's nothing there.
There's nothing there.
There is a house there,
There is a cottage there.
but it could be repaired.
It's
The
an
house
exist-
could be repaired, but there's no septic.
There's no septic, no well,
There is no
nothing.
well.
There is a well, it says existing well.
There is no well.
No, there's no well.
No, there's,
And Doug,
Oh,
the existing well is on the other property, that's Grandy's well.
That's
And there's a
mine.
well over here too. This is a proposed well up here.
So there is no existing well for the house?
No,
No.
none.
The proposed well is here, this is the neighbor's well.
Okay, so this house did have no well.
And there's no sewage.
They
that's
were,
all.
they were
That's-
pumping
yeah,
water out of the
That's
lake.
engineering and
Pumping
that's all
water out of the
part
lake,
the septic.
okay.
Which is-
That's Board of Health.
I've done probably 40 houses around this lake where they pump water, they used to pump water out of the lake. That's
Not
how
till
they
that
get their
long
water.
ago, actually.
That's
yeah.
how my camp is.
You know?
Yeah.
And,
But that's not our thing
Was.
anyway.
no, but
That's not-
those are
that's not
Board of
our
Health
fault.
issues.
To a certain
Unfortunately.
degree it is, because one of the things, one of the public interest is protection of surface and groundwater
Exactly.
quality
Yes.
and quantity.
Exactly.
So, the idea is though, is that, like, in this case, a well, do you think that the well is going to adversely impact the water levels in the wetland, like dry it out and
No.
make it
Exactly.
non-functional? That's what you have to decide.
An artesian well that's down 200-something feet.
Yeah, that usually happens like with public wells where you're.
In this
taking
area, the
out
wells are in
copious
excess
amounts
of
of water.
300 feet deep.
You're getting into a, yeah, you're not, it's
You're
not,
on a
it's not,
ledge, you're-
yeah.
You do not want surface water in a deep well.
Anything else, ma'am?
I just think it's a very dangerous project at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why people over the last 15, 20 years have been trying to build on that, and the town of Sutton have said it's
No.
an unbuildable lot. There's nothing existing there.
That's
Wouldn't
not
let
true.
people
That's
build
not
it
true.
all.
So
That's not
by
true.
definition, and the only reason I threw the price at it wasn't to be a wise guy, it's just, I try to get that out there because you clearly don't want a house there. So anything that Mr. Murphy comes in, you guys are not gonna like. The lot is it's non-conforming, but it's a legal lot by definition of the town of Sutton. If it was not a legal lot, Bob couldn't come in front of us. It wouldn't even be on there. So it is a buildable lot, even though it's odd shape and it's crazy. He has the right to build, and they could come in for an approval just to rebuild the existing house, and they gotta get approval for a septic system. So the way I look at it is, let's all try to work together. There's gonna be a house there.
Well, there was a discussion with the Board of Health, and they said you cannot build a new septic system. You can repair it if there was an existing septic system,
But
but
there
there
isn't.
isn't one.
It's an outhouse. So
So he'll have to go through that with Board of Health. I've never had Board of Health say you can't do a
We've
septic
already
system.
I've had discussions with the DEP, Title V Division. Basically, their idea is if the house was serviced with a privy, which is an outhouse.
Yeah.
And then there was any kind of upgrade to the privy, doesn't matter what it was, if it was a Clivus Multrum toilet or a, mulching toilet or whatever. If it was if it was a change or an increase, new technology, you can still revert back to the original privy, because that's what was it's basically considered a repair. It's alternative technology. But you cannot take away someone's right to repair a septic system if you can show that there was a privy, and we have evidence that there was.
So you can prove that, cause I know they're gonna ask the Board of Health to see it, so.
The neighbors acknowledged it. They said that, they even told me where the privy was.
Okay.
We went with the Board of Health, we found evidence of it. Again, that's a Board of Health issue.
Yeah, it's not our issue
The
anyway.
idea thing to mention here is that this lot is 50 feet wide, and it goes down to the lake. Lots on either side of this are 50 feet wide, and
With-
they go down to the lake.
With big homes, yeah.
They had shacks on them at one time, and now they have houses. The house that we're proposing here is going to be smaller than the houses on either side of us. So again, it's a moderate, it's not gonna be a big expensive house. It's meant to be a moderate priced house.
Is that it, ma'am?
I'm just blown away. I'm just totally blown away. I can't believe we've gotten this far with
Right.
this piece of property.
And it's been turned down so many times, so many people tried to
Who
purchase it.
turned it down?
It has not.
The
The
town.
town of Sutton.
Please remember, please listen to me. We talked about this in the Board of Health. The Board of Health has never seen an application for this.
Yeah.
This commission has never seen an application for this. And the building department, zoning, has never seen an application for it. So, I've heard this in quite a few hearings where you have hearsay, it's been turned down.
I've actually seen the plans myself, that there have been engineering plans submitted to the
Well,
town.
we're gonna have to find them.
It has not been turned down.
Yeah, I think that would be your only
I've already
legal avenue.
contacted my lawyer, so,
Okay.
just to let you know.
Is that it, ma'am?
Like I say, they can buy it.
Sir, your name and
But
address?
that's why I threw it up
Main
there.
Street, 21 West Sutton Road.
Yes, sir.
I've been there all my life. Now I gotta disagree with him on cutting the lawn and that. You open up them doors down there, they're in a foot of water, out the lawn was. They haven't been started or moved
No,
in 5 years at least. And I know that because I look in there, the door's wide open. I looked in there one time and you got a ledge there, you wouldn't believe the ledge in there. I don't know if you've seen that ledge it's built on.
I just float by it, I've never,
The ledge is probably half the bigger than this room that it's built on now. But as far as someone cutting that lawn, nobody's cut that lawn. You go down there, them lawnmowers, I'd like to see somebody start that lawnmowers. There's 2 lawnmowers, there's a couple of weed whackers, it's like a dump in there.
Sure there's critters in
Nobody's
there,
done
too.
it. And as far as, like I say, groundwater, you go in there in the spring, 2 feet of water. There's a lot of water in the wetline coming under the road, right there. That's not good for the lake either.
Definitely not.
anybody else from the audience? So I think that, I think that the abutters are concerned with issues that are away from our board. Our board's direction and view is to protect the public interest and protect the lake. So if they're gonna put in a proper septic system, proper drainage, and a proper stabilized lot, and a proper retaining wall, and a proper parking area, and, you know, some other things that we probably reach a little bit beyond our jurisdiction and control, some minor things, there's nothing we can do to shut this project down to conservation. I think that if you, your arguments, which I don't know anything about any other boards, would be for either zoning or Board of Health.
And building. If
Yeah,
you're saying
yeah.
if it's not a buildable lot.
Possibly building, but, you know, as far as conservation goes, we're just the tree police, so
We enforce the Wetlands Protection Act.
Right. Yes, sir.
Yes. I was at the Board of Health last meeting that they had, not crossing boards or anything like that. But Mr. Malo, he
Yep.
was on the Board of Health. Mr. Murphy told him he doesn't know too much about Title V. He told Mr. Malo, and that's their job. I remember that as clear as yesterday. Can't remember my name, but he didn't, he told him that he didn't know nothing about Title V, much about Title V. You don't remember that, do you?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, that Title V issue, that would be that board's
He was
issue.
talking about Title V and what he's doing, septic and all this.
Yeah.
And
I don't particularly care for the well and the septics being that close, like I said, and I'll go on public record and say that the town should look into putting public sewer through that whole stretch. I
That's
don't,
what I'm saying.
all the way, if I had my druthers, I'd run it all the way to Marsh Road, but,
Yeah.
that's
Title-
nothing we can do.
But Title V, that's what the Board of Health is all about, Title V.
Right.
And he said they don't know much about it.
That's taken out of context.
Oh.
Be aware of that.
That's not our thing anyway.
I
Yes,
don't,
ma'am.
I don't
I
tell
just
people.
wanted to let you know, I
don't
did call the DEP and Worcester and the DEP in Boston,
Mhm.
and I'm waiting for a call back from them, asking them questions about if you can use an outhouse for an upgrade for a septic. I haven't got a call back yet, but I will let you know when I hear from them.
Yeah, I don't think that that'll be at the DEP's, well, yeah, I suppose in their wastewater division. I don't know that. That's not I'm just a board member.
Yeah.
So I, you know, like I said, our job is not that. That's gonna be your Board of Health issues.
But
and-
that's
and
actually
building and
a
zoning.
good point, cause it does have a DEP number. Do you get any information back from DEP? Did they make
no
any
comment.
comments? No comment.
Was there any comments listed, Brandon? Can you just double check that, cause,
Yeah, I'll get that right now. In fact, I think I already have it
but
up.
it, even still,
So
a sewage issue wouldn't be our board.
But that is a good point to make, cause DEP, there's been a couple new people, and they've kind of been dragging their feet, so it's good you have a number. They have been making notes back, so if they had something on it, they would make a comment.
No
Like-
comments.
No comments, okay.
Through the chair, just if
Just
we're
a
gonna
quick
discuss this.
point. When
So
you-
Bob,
When you
what's
do
the
a
process?
Title V inspection, okay, when you do a Title V inspection for, you know, existing house, when you buy a house, it says right on there, what is the house serviced by? One of the services is a privy, which is an outhouse.
So
And
Bob, I'm gonna stop you, cause we've already spent a lot of time on this. And I do understand your concerns, but I understand all this all too well, I do it for a living. The process that he has to go through Board of Health is designed and approved by a civil engineer, stamp submitted to the town. They have to pay a town's consulting engineer to review the plan and agree, and he also approves it. So if it makes it through those two engineers, it's not done incorrectly, it's not what somebody else tried to do. It's right now, here in the moment, under the regulations, and that's not DEP in the sense of the wetlands and what we do. They don't see septic designs, those aren't submitted, they're submitted final plans that are probably approved, or in this case, they're not approved. So if we've submitted this to DEP and they've fed back, it's not even on an approved system, so they don't weigh in on that, is what I'm getting at. So it's not our board to worry about how the septic works, if it's gonna get into the perimeter drain, because we assume that that's taken care of at Board of Health. And it's not just assumed, it's double and triple checked. So I don't think this board should spend any more time on it, in any discussion, because I don't think we're closing this tonight. But let's stick to facts. It's the Wetland Protection Act. Brandon did a great job at weighing in on all of that. Anything beyond Brandon's discussion, I think, is good conversation with townspeople, but everybody has to understand that this meets all the criteria of today to be built. Public meetings are to educate you guys too. So I hope that we're helping with that. That's why we want you to ask questions. Because it's not to leave angry or think that we allowed anything. It's to understand the process that was put in front of this board and the other boards. All that I can say is if it makes it through 3 different boards in town, I hope that it's correct. I hope that we're not letting things go through that shouldn't. And from what I've seen, for the most part, we're all doing a pretty good job at it. And that if it makes it through all our boards, and I think Bill's point was just, if it meets those criteria, we might not like it, but we could all work together and neighbors buy land and try to keep it more open. And I know Bill's in favor of those things, and I think that's just what he was trying to say. But at the end of the day, if it meets all the criteria, it looks like at first glance to us, this is a good project. It meets all the requirements of Board of Health. It's gonna be better when it's done. When we say better, meaning you have a shack with an outhouse that they will, I'm not saying someone's going to recreate an outhouse, but there's a house there that people could go stay in, and the Board of Health conditions aren't right. And what Bob's trying to explain is there's systems today that can fix it all, and make it better. So just know that if this gets my vote, it's only because I feel it is better. Because that's why we donate a lot of our time, is to make sure that we do what's best for the town. Now, just one other thing, Bob. 25 feet is where we really don't want people to disturb beyond, and you're not showing any deck, and you're already coming closer than you were with the existing house. I just know I won't not remember those things as long as I'm on the board. Because the thing that's tough is when you see it come and then they come for more and more and more. So, if you're gonna consider having a deck on the front of this house, it should be discussed sooner than later. That was if we're gonna just have a little bit more
Or
as
pave a
we.
patio or anything like
Anything
that.
else, like, and to Brandon's point, he said, make sure that when you come back, you show us everything. I think some of the members are concerned about the parking. We're kinda saying if you made a bigger parking area, we're okay with that because of the safety of the road. Those are things that's what you guys wanna worry about, like if it's gonna get
scary.
developed, well,
It's very scary.
but let's pay attention to the parking areas. Let's have discussion of how to make it safer. There's a camp there, people wanna use it, and that's what we can't stop, because zoning's gonna allow it. Like, our regulations will allow this to happen.
I mean, there's plenty of things that the town of Sutton can do on that road to make it safer, and they don't.
Yeah,
There's
but
lots
that's
that
not
they could
our,
do. I'm just saying, in context to what he's saying, there's lots of
But
things
that
can be
has
done.
to be approved usually at town meeting when we spend money to fix roads. And I
Right,
think
and
the
nothing
2
happens.
town meetings, no, I think us as townspeople didn't approve and allocate any funds to work on roads, but that could just keep going on and on.
Okay,
I
if I
just wanna
could,
say one thing, 5 seconds, that's all. I mean, whose job is it to put this published in the Millville Journal? Whose job? Is it the town or is it him?
They,
My
It's not
job.
in the
they,
Millville Journal.
there is no Millbury Journal.
There is.
No, it's the Chronicle.
Chronicle.
Well, yeah, Millville, Sutton Millville Chronicle.
But
Says
the-
right here, notice of public hearing include its date, time, and place will be published at least 5 days in advance in the Millville Sutton Chronicle. Well, here's my Millville Sutton Chronicle, there's nothing in there.
one, do you have when it was
It
supposed
was
to?
just one day,
Should be in there.
so it could have been in,
It-
it's not like they put it in all 5 days, they put it in one day.
One day.
Yeah.
At least 5, so.
Yeah, but I
Could've
mean,
been a month
it's not
ago.
in there.
It was.
Could have been a month ago.
Yeah, a month ago.
A month ago?
Oh, yeah, because this is a
Because of
continuation.
the, this is continuation.
Well,
just to
no, it
answer your
wasn't,
question.
it wasn't
Two
open.
days before I found out.
Wasn't
about
open.
it.
We-
Other
we
things that
paid
they-
for it. We
we've
paid
taken the
for it.
trees, the stormwater
Yeah.
management, the captures, I mean, like, there's so many.
Yeah.
Alright.
If I might, just basically.
Yeah, just like 2 seconds, so I'm sorry,
just a
we
quick
got
one.
other things.
My biggest concern is those retaining walls. Who do I talk to about that? Board of Health or
What retaining walls?
retaining walls that are on the plans?
Yeah, they're gonna go along the sidelines of the septic system and then
That would be the zoning and building.
Okay, that's
Actually,
one of my biggest concerns.
Main authority would be the building department.
Alright,
They
I need
tell
a
us how-
motion.
So
they
just so
tell
they
us
know how
to build.
retaining wall, so anything over 4 feet from finished grade would have to be designed by a structural engineer. I don't know, I didn't really study these plans.
It's been designed by a structural engineer.
Oh, quick,
It's
quick
been-
It was
afterthought.
supposed to be on the plans for the Board of Health, and it was never added to it, and he was supposed to add it on. I'm not sure if it happened or not.
Bob, can you make sure we see a copy of that, just?
It's on your plan, it's on
So,
these plans.
when would you like to continue to? Is
2 weeks?
Will you be in front of Board of Health and everybody else before 2 weeks?
No, no.
Would you prefer to extend?
Oh, yeah, the Board of Health is in February, so
February what?
January.
Cause ours is 5th,
well into February. So I would
Yeah, I
say
would-
minimum.
or 5th or 19th.
So I'm gonna make a motion to,
What are the dates in February of conservation here?
5th and the
5th and the
19th.
19th.
And the 19th.
I don't know when.
I,
The
I
19th.
think we gotta wait till we hear from the ZBA too.
Well,
Yeah,
we could
can
always continue it.
But that's why I said 2 weeks is probably not enough.
Yeah,
No, no.
continue it to the 19th.
Just to
You wanna do
make
the
you aware, I have listened to the concerns of the board and neighbors, and we will come back to you with a plan with a revised parking area that will have the parking a little further off the street for safety.
Yeah.
We will have additional information on the tree removal. I make no bones about it, I used to be a climber, and taking down these trees is dangerous. So, you know.
And they ask for wall information too.
You know, you've gotta be careful with which way they go. So you'll have special equipment to take them down. And also, as far as the landscaping along the lake, we'll be adding a 10-foot buffer with blueberries, shrubs, things like that, to make it more natural on the edge. So the plan that you'll have in front of you on the 19th will be substantially more information than what we have tonight.
Okay.
Make a motion to continue to February 19th at
6:30.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Bob, think about stairways going down that,
Go ahead, the
that
stairway.
wall. Yeah, cause that's probably a public safety issue. If you can't access somebody gets hurt and then,
We graded it for
Yeah.
that, but I'll add the stairway.
well, not just that, but the retaining wall. At the retaining wall to get down into the yard by the
Kinda go
water.
around it.
Okay.
If you look at the house, we designed the wall to go through it.
The plan itself, I know it's 1 to 20, but it's really, it takes up a small part of the plan, it's really tight.
Okay.
We could add it, we could make it 10 scale.
That'd be wonderful.
And make sure Brandon gets it 1 week prior.
Zach, can you send these both over to Wanda?
No, I'll be in touch with Brandon about it, he'll have more than a week prior.
That was an intense one.
It's good though, you gotta get it all out there.
Brand new, it's kinda controversial, 1 hour's actually not bad.
You know, and I have a little problem with the way the property was even ascertained.
Again, that's not our issue, and that's.
We
I'm
have-
not saying it, I'm just saying,
I
off
underst-
record, whatever.
I understand, our
It's-
board is just the Wetlands Protection Act.
It was ascertained in a very shady way.
Yeah,
So-
I know nothing about that, I'm sorry.
I know you don't.
Town-
That's the problem. There's not
The town
enough-
took it for taxes,
Yeah, I don't
and
know.
they sold it. Wasn't shady. Completely legit.
All right, have a good night.
Take care now.
Thank you. All right, next up is gonna be 26 Mallard Way. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Listen, you have to read something in, cause it's an RDA too.
What?
No, need your folder.
Oh. Oh, this has gotta go, oh, no, wait a minute, this is the new one. What's that, I'm sorry.
It's an RDA and an NOI?
I don't know, is this an RDA and an NOI?
No, this one should just be an NOI.
All right,
I'm sorry.
and this was
It's an
continued.
NOI.
bunch
This
of
is a
times.
continuation.
Yep.
Continuation.
Make a motion to waive the reading of 26 Mallard Way.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Welcome back.
Hi. You
Welcome.
guys got plans?
I see a Mai Tai in my future, but that's about it.
Thank you.
There were three issues, Mr. Chairman. The first one was the deck adjacent to the lake. Too close and being closer than 25 feet.
Sorry.
Why don't we dissect these one at a time? So what are your comments on the deck, Brandon?
They've removed the deck on the lakeside. They've expanded them on the sidelines, which
Okay.
that seems to meet all the policies you have.
Okay.
They've added stone infiltration strip to the new proposed garage, right? So
yeah.
now there's infiltration and there's plantings proposed. Those are the three things that came up last meeting we had, and they've addressed all those.
Okay. There's extra plantings. I know we had requested that a while ago.
Yep, I did 6 trees and 6 shrubs.
There's nothing else with you, Brandon?
No.
Joyce? I know you had a couple on the last plan.
Yeah, I still remember stuff down here, but it's not on the plan, so, anyway.
The plantings, they were supposed to put in by that little path where we put in the put in for the I remember there being high bush blueberry down there planted a number of years ago. So, I do remember that being done.
It's still there.
Bill?
It looks good.
Mike? Zach?
I think it looks good.
Nicole?
You good?
Now, we still have a zoning meeting tomorrow night,
So we can't close it?
but I was
Well-
wondering if, I could have my order of conditions ready for the next meeting.
Well, here's a
We
question.
can close this out, but if it's any changes, then you
We
gotta.
can do that as a
You gotta
condition.
come back.
It's your risk.
Yeah.
What's your feeling for tomorrow night? Is it tomorrow night? Yeah.
Yes, the feeling is good.
You got a good feeling?
Yes.
Better than the last
Yes,
hour?
they had a sidewalk.
Well, would they have to come back with just a minor field change? Or what kind of come back? If it's come back for something minor, I have no problem, but come
What are you
back,
asking
It's up
ZBA
to them
for?
to
What are
get
you-
it.
what are you going in
come
front of
back and
ZBA for?
refile, that's a big deal.
ZBA is to, expand what's on the lot already, pretty much.
Cause it's non-conforming?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's a
because
lot-
there's
it's
two houses,
non-conforming,
right?
yeah.
You want
So is it one of those
30%?
deals where they're either gonna give you everything or give you nothing?
Right, yeah,
They also did a full site visit, the whole team,
Yeah.
and they had no issues after going.
Your call?
Jump,
you know,
leave
to
it
tell
at
you
that.
the
I mean,
truth, you
it's-
know, I'd be all for closing the hearing, but I don't like to do it in that order, so.
Well, why close the public hearing if we're not gonna vote? I would leave it open in case we,
Right,
Yeah.
So
that's just.
so the next time we come in, bing bang, done.
You don't even-
Big bang
well,
now,
You know,
but it's
yeah.
not your.
Would they even have to come in? They don't even.
Yeah, they have to close
Unless-
the public hearing.
Gotta close the
They don't
public
have to be
hearing.
here. We could do it without them
We can do it
present.
without them.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Unless
Well,
there's a change.
Unless there's a change on
Unless there's a
ZBA.
change,
yeah.
right.
So why don't we just continue it to the next meeting? We have no comments, right?
I just think you should, I mean, it's a whole approval, you should be
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Well, cause what if you
Oh,
have
I
a
totally
public-
agree.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah.
not
Alright.
come.
Yeah, it's
Just,
fine with me.
Okay.
not to make it hard, it will be probably 2
Okay.
seconds of your time,
Karen, so if everything goes well tomorrow night, nothing changes, let me know.
Okay,
I'll have the order of conditions ready for the next meeting.
That's
They can
awesome.
sign it right, boom, boom.
that's awesome.
I'm cool with that.
So we're gonna make the motion to continue to February, we say 5th?
No,
That's
actually
January.
January.
22nd
Sorry, thank you.
at 6:40.
Oh, you're an early one. January 22nd at 6:40.
6:40. Need a second on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Wish you guys were first, sorry.
It's entertaining. All right.
They're good plans.
Next up is the minutes from December 18th. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes for December 18th today? They came in about 2 o'clock.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
I spent some time at DEP, so by the time I got back and get it all straightened
Make a
out.
motion to approve the minutes of December 18th.
I did not get a chance,
Oh,
so
you-
should I recuse
Do you wanna
myself?
wait?
No.
No, we can,
Want me to table
table.
them?
if you want.
Well, did 4 out of 5 of us see him? Cause
Mhm.
a no vote.
Yeah.
Did everybody else see it? We'll just run it.
Okay, I'll
Alright.
just abstain.
Did I get a second on that?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
401, right?
Zach, if you do look at them and you find anything, just bring it up and we.
Okay.
401 on that one. After you're done that, we have a sign off from planning for Ledge Street.
Map, lot, or address, please?
It
Is
just
Ledge
says
Street the
Ledge.
one in Manchog or the one off?
It's in Manchester.
Okay, I know where it is, yeah. It's, right at the four corners, on the right-hand side if you're heading up Putnam Hill.
Goes up towards Stevens Pond.
The plan,
Right across from the
Right.
fire station, right?
information, it comes from planning, it goes with the plan.
Site.
Is that really it, this thin strip?
Yeah,
No,
it's next
it's
to
not that
that.
shape. It's, 4 Ledge Street, I think, or is it? It's in the corner of Ledge and Snow.
Parcels.
Yeah,
What's it for?
That's
Yeah.
the site, so it's just that.
this is 435 Putnam Hill, so it's 4 Ledge.
This is what when I brought up 4 Ledge, this is what I got.
Yeah, that's wrong.
Alright.
Ledge
It's a
is.
squared off piece.
Oh, map 48, lot 49.
Map 49.
Map 49, lot 98.
Not
How
lot
did I have it?
48.
This says map 49, lot 98.
Oh, then the paperwork is wrong, cause I read it from the paperwork.
Let me see. Existing house, 2 Ledge Street.
The paperwork says, see, it says here, oh, that's Snow Road.
Let me try to look for 4 Ledge, right?
Yeah,
I'll try it that way.
yeah, I'll try it too.
Or Snow Street,
Oh, maybe it's 4 Snow.
it's Snow Street.
It's on the corner of
not
Snow and
Ledge.
Ledge.
So it's map 49, lot 48, so I don't know if it's a new lot or what,
Try 4 Snow, Brandon, I
How
think
old is this one?
Can't be a new lot.
I don't know.
I'm looking
4
for
Snow
Snow.
Street.
I don't know, but here's the sign,
4
Four.
Snow Road.
Snow Road.
It's not even on here.
So if it's going to
I
planning
got it.
board, it's gotta be being then created as a new lot, right? That's what it's coming for?
Can you,
49, map 49, lot, parcel
98.
49.
4998.
98.
Why is it, so if it's at planning board, is it for a business? Is
They
it-
just wanna make sure there's no wetlands. They
Right.
must be trying to put a house there, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but you'd only be at planning board if you're trying to create a lot, or if you're trying to do an in-law, or
Maybe it's not conforming use or something.
or a business,
Yeah.
if it's a business.
That's a business district. down
Is this
there.
have something to do with the old school?
Oh, maybe the church?
Well, what did we just approve? The old VFW.
For the benefit?
No, that's on the other side.
Swan Street
The other
extension.
side?
Yeah.
That one?
I didn't know if it was the back corner or something.
I don't think
I
so.
got a 4 Ledge Street here.
That's what it is.
Is it back to 4 Ledge?
Street.
Oh, here we go.
Is that on the
Roadway-
corner of Legend
So
Snow?
this is a roadway improvement
Summer?
plan. So go back to that little triangle, this is to improve the road.
This is the number.
Oh, maybe the entrance in? Is that what it is?
I don't know, now I'm confused.
No, well, look, it says right here.
But look at the parcel. it
Roadway
has.
improvement plan, that's what the plan they gave
Oh.
us.
This is the parcel it has.
Yeah, but is that
Is
the
this for
right
the
one?
town?
No, it's a definitive subdivision plan.
Prepared
So
by
I don't know what
Allen
they're
Engineering.
subdividing.
Bev, Bellavox.
Prepared for yeah, no, it's Bellevue Homes, it's not the town.
On Ledge Street?
Yeah, they must be putting.
So
small
Ledge
subdivision
Street
there.
is back here, and that,
Yeah, see,
that
Right
abuts
there.
the Forcia property,
Right there.
which
Looks like they're trying to reclaim
they
it all.
donated half of it for conservation.
They've never come in to finish that though, have they?
No.
They haven't finished that.
So this is
That
a
was
plan.
for the, conservation restriction, but they never came in to finish.
Wide pavement.
Yeah, I got it.
so they're using, I got it, I can explain it, I
Remember
figured it out.
we went up
So,
there and we
You go
saw
to
the
the TV?
I'm gonna go to the television.
leak in the in the
You here for that?
water tank?
Okay.
You're still here. We didn't scare you away.
What's he
So this
here
is what
for?
they wanna do.
What's he here for?
He was here for the first one.
You should be on the
Yeah,
board
the
if you
access.
need
And
another.
this,
You'd be a
8
good guy right
feet
there.
wide with asphalt to put some stuff back here. I don't think there's any wetlands, so can you just find that and make sure there's no wetlands?
I was just gonna say, the only thing we care about is in our jurisdiction.
That's all we care about.
But it looks like they're improving some abandoned road.
It looks like there's actually a right-of-way cut in.
Maybe it's a right way to
there's
that
like
property.
some kind of a path through there.
Oh, there's actually.
No, it's Snow Road.
There's actually
Look.
a, yeah.
It continues on.
Oh, okay.
There's actually.
It's
this is-
Snow
this is a
Road.
paper.
And
Snow
they're
Road,
trying to
yeah.
say an extension, so
Yeah.
that's why it's
Is that up near
triggers.
that water tank where we got sprayed with the water when it was
No,
leaking
but
down?
it's down in the Manchug area.
I remember you telling me that.
That was
Town's
one of the
water
coolest
tank.
things I
Leaking,
ever
right?
saw.
Yeah, and there was all
So
this.
there's no wetlands
such a
anywhere near
plan.
this, then?
Well,
Yeah, all
well,
nice
it's
trees.
just
Where's it coming
for
from? And it was
those two spots and not the greater property.
Just write that on the description, we're all set, but just for those particular spots.
Yeah, just for
The large property will need to file, because I can see a wetland on it, right here. Okay,
Oh, is that what the, yeah, but
right in here,
they
that's all
wouldn't be
wet.
able,
That must be part of it.
but the road ends, so they could be doing one house in that whole parcel. Cause they're not asking for a road, they're asking to fix the,
Right.
Well, it's probably a legal road, it just was never done.
Yeah, I don't think it's,
yeah, but if you wanna build out, you have to up, like, you can't,
you can't
you can do it to maybe one or two houses, but you can't,
make it work,
yeah, you can't all of a sudden have 50 houses off this road and all that land.
102D, that's
Maybe we should just
a lot of ledge.
ask for a little clarification from planning board, we seem to be okay with it.
Well, just tell
Is
them,
it just to improve the road, an existing road that's there, and does it end there?
you wanna ask Jen that?
That's what it appears to be, a small stretch of road on that
Assume
lot,
that's it, we're fine.
It'll not be
Yeah.
back till next week.
and then.
As
if this
far
is-
as this extension of Snow Street, that's a paper street, there's no, I have no issues with that.
Just, I guess we could just, I'll ask, just out of I'm more curious, like,
Yeah.
why you're improving a
Yeah,
road to
see, there's-
where? Roads mean houses.
There's the, oh, that lot has frontage on Whiting's Road too, which they have as Whiting Road. Where'd you get that Walmart, I shouldn't have
The
said Walmart,
Commonwealth of
that's a
Massachusetts,
copyright
Mr.
thing,
Chairman.
huh? Okay.
It must
Yeah, this is
be
the
trying to
Forcia
make a
property.
right of way to the piece of land
Yeah, is
to
that-
further development, but
It-
I'm sure it'll come back in front of us if.
But is that the property that came in front of us? Is that the right of way in there possibly?
This property, came front and center when there was issues with, there was a beaver dam up here. This is a backwater of, Duck Brook, or, yeah, over here, where it kinda, it bypasses around, what was the name of the pond?
Stevens Pond?
No, just Tucker, thank you. And the Forciers own the property, so they came down. Then eventually, the Forciers said they were putting part of the property into conservation restriction. I don't know what part. So that's where we are.
So what do we wanna do?
Adjourn.
I know.
And the Forcier, Mr. Forcier was on.
Can we
was on-
just-
Why don't we do this?
Read-
I'll stop the
Sure,
planning board
Board
and just
District.
check
Yeah.
on it, and if I,
Just tell them we're not gonna sign off until we get some more
She won't
information.
be back till Monday.
That's okay.
so then Monday, I don't think it'll
So, yeah,
affect
wait
anything,
till
right? I'll go see her
No.
on Monday.
We have all the time.
Is
in
that
the
right?
world.
Is that
It
cool?
sounds good to me.
Perfect.
All right.
And then if it's just that improvement that we can see there's no wetlands, I'll say they're fine, but if that's,
91, I'm sorry to cut you off.
no, you're not.
91 Burbank Road, the Sibley Dam project, 3030900.
It is not ready for COC.
It's not,
There's two big washouts on the side,
okay.
and they may wanna check the erosion controls, cause the silt has all gone down there and starting to pile up. But I think I sent pictures out of that thing on the bottom, and they had said that the grass would grow up and fill that in, but there's pieces of that sticking up, which may be a problem in the spring when,
They can clean that up
Animals.
now. I saw the pictures, and there's no reason they can't thin that all out. You can just pick it up with your hands. It's
they don't
it-
wanna pick it up because they,
not the whole map, but just where it's excessive, like that big balling you see
Yeah.
is hampering the growth of the lawn, cause I've
Yeah.
used that product before, and if they clean up some of the mesh, not take it up, just where it's heavy like that,
Yeah.
they could wait till the spring, I do, but that needs to be cleaned up or the grass will never grow.
and
to
on
some
the,
extent.
on the side, there were areas maybe 4 feet wide where it had all washed out and washed down. And there was 2 blowouts like that on the side, so it's not as stable.
Okay. We can wait then.
So are those areas where there's heavy runoff, that maybe it should be riprap and not, or is it once it grass, you think it just, I haven't been out there, do you think?
That depends on how things go over the winter time. I mean, if
There's no riprap on that side. On on the north side toward the pond, there's riprap,
Usually.
but on
oh,
the south side,
Usually where you see the big erosion, water kind of funnels its way to
Yeah.
a spot, and is it
And if
just
it's
something
bad
that-
enough, you gotta put down stone. At this point, there's gonna be no vegetation growing, so you're not gonna be able to stabilize it that way. So if you gotta go with stone, you gotta go with stone. The other thing they could do is put down an erosion control blanket. But
they
that's
could do
really
that and then
two
probably
options.
establish, some grass in the spring. But it's where they put that road in to build it at the bottom, and then the slope is like this, and there's two big washouts.
Would we say it in a way that we would allow them to use riprap to stabilize?
Yeah.
Just so when the goal is to get the certificate of compliance, and we need to be stable to
It's
get
I
better
it.
to
don't
put
think we
stone
could do
down
it till the
than
spring.
to have sediment wash into the
Right.
Well, what I'm
waterway.
saying, yeah, if this
Yeah.
is a heavy washout spot.
Why don't we send an email and say that must be repaired?
And they can riprap it, it's stabilized forever, and the weeds will grow between the riprap event, and it's
Yeah.
fixed now, and it doesn't go through the spring, and, well, cause it feeds right into that river down there, right? I mean, so if there was a way, alls I'm saying, we're having a mild winter, they might be able to just get in there with some riprap, fix it once and for all. It'll not wash out anymore in the spring, it'll not have to spend any more money trying to grow grass and stabilize a mat,
And if you say you can cut that stuff up and,
I would just clean it up, use the word, just pick up that heavy clumping of it.
Can,
It'll pull right out of the lawn.
Wanda, can you send an email with that description?
And hopefully we won't get any more sediment.
Or just tell them to watch minute?
Especially where I believe there's been a pretty big cleanup project downstream of this. Well, I mean, we gotta be cautious of sediment now. This is starting to be more of a finished project, and
Can we just have them review the tape? Just have them watch the tape from, like an hour and,
well, they could,
Tell me who I'm supposed to
say,
send it to.
we could just send them something saying that it's not ready for certificate of compliance because we noticed erosion issues and issues with the mesh at the bottom.
in riprap we would allow,
and riprap would allow.
if it'll stabilize the areas.
Next up under board business is the permit primer draft update. And this is the one that
Okay,
went from 10
Brandon,
pages to
we
like
did-
4, right?
Yeah,
We
that's
did
great.
page 2.
No,
There are 3 pages now, so what I'll have to do is I'll have to reduce some of the,
Oh, yeah, you gotta get rid of
Size
this
of the
third page,
wording,
that's,
yeah.
you know how many trees are gonna die?
yeah, we'll just have to reduce some of the size.
Change the font.
It might be because the second page has all the yellow on it.
Yeah, just change the font, I think it'll be fine. As long as,
So these are galvanized steel pole. Just 'cause I see these little green temporary fence poles with the plaques on them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what people seem to be doing. My only question is I want this to be what we're gonna, so if we're doing them.
we're gonna enforce it.
Right. Is this what we're gonna enforce?
yes, only because
Not, cause well, then we should change it.
this says
That's
any
all I'm saying, 'cause
alternatives.
that's not what people are doing.
I know, we gotta change it, we're gonna change it with this
With
though.
this starting like
Any-
fresh.
Because we're gonna make a mess of this town with these signs that are falling over in 4 or 5 years, and some are standing up,
Yeah.
and some are falling over.
They're
Those,
not gonna be there anyway, cause they're gonna, you heard what someone said, well,
I-
can you take
well
it
then-
down
so
after I'm
then-
approved?
and I agree, and I don't know if we can discuss it now, but the last meeting, we had somebody come who bought a house, and I've driven by there a couple of times now and stopped and looked. The temporary green pole with the metal plate on it, it looks like a whole bunch in the front of the house is already missing. We know there's some missing in the back, but I think there's some missing in the front, because after I saw the plan, it was fresh in my head. When I drove by, it looks like quite a few in the front yard are missing. They're supposed to be every 50 feet, they're not. They stop, the minute you bend, the whole front yard doesn't have one in it.
We can only talk about it as it pertains to this discussion, that's the only
Okay,
thing.
well then, so my question is, I don't want rules that we don't enforce. I'm not a fan of this particular one to begin with. I think they should be along the wetland sign, edge of wetland. And it's not that I don't like the idea of giving the extra protection, I just don't think they're gonna stay. And if we're gonna make people spend money, I'd rather it be in a spot that at least they're gonna stay. The more we educate people of 100, 2, whatever the jurisdictions are, and if you see the sign, it's like you post it for speeding, doesn't mean people won't speed, but most people don't. And if we can get most of the people to conform to the rules, the signs stay everywhere. I just think we should have more discussion about this, because I think it's hard to really enforce that sign that's not along a wetland line, that's along the edge of disturbance, and I get it all. And I'm not in total disagreement. The thing is I just don't think they're gonna stay. Unless we enforce this, cemented steel pole with a sign. But is that what we wanna look at? Is this the best of all the evils?
Well, it
Not
says
me.
alternatives.
Can be,
Yeah, but those aren't good alternatives. Granite bounders, we've had conversations now, the mowers, they hit them with the mower, they're gonna be in the weeds, people aren't gonna see them, so it's defeating the purpose, it's creating cost, it doesn't accomplish anything. It's not that I'm in favor of it being on the wetland, I just think that will make a difference as the years to come.
And they'll just mow up to that area, and the buffer zone will not be there.
But they're gonna take the signs down anyways, they're gonna mow.
yeah, a couple areas the signs are already
Joyce, I
down.
don't disagree, I do, and it's not that I want it to be less restrictive, I promise you, that's not what my intent is. It's just that I truly think that if they're along the edge of wetland, they're a steel galvanized pole set in concrete with a good signage, and we continue to be the board we've been, and we've got good bylaws, and we have good public television, and I would tell you, most people in this town, they get conservation now. They understand that there's a jurisdiction prior to that edge of wetland. And if we focus more on educating people that there's a jurisdiction from that sign 100 feet or 200 feet, whatever it would be, depending on the different areas, I think that will accomplish more in the long run of actually protecting the resource areas, because the signs will stay.
But if they,
No, go ahead, I do, and I respect it.
you know, if there is no buffer zone, then what's the point?
You know,
But Joyce, if it's gone in a year or two,
But it should be there, I mean,
are you gonna start, so when we notice they're gone, how are we gonna police this? Are we gonna pull townspeople in and we're gonna start fining them and this is what,
yeah, you can.
There you go.
Yeah.
I personally not gonna
Yeah.
ever do that, and I think there's other people that have made the same statement.
But if they can pull them out of the buffer zone, they'll go pull them out of the wetland area.
But,
you're right.
right, but most people, edge of wetland is never, it's not good land, it's wet. People don't wanna go in it. Most people know not to destroy the wetlands. That's a state gets them, it's not an argument at all. I'm just saying, if this is the rule we're gonna put in, are we ready to enforce it? And if we're not, I don't think it should be there.
I would say yes. I think you need the buffer zone.
Well, I agree with you, they need a buffer zone, but do you need if I build a new house tomorrow and all said and done, the costs are between, I think new construction in this town is between $600,000 and $800,000. Am I gonna be happy with a $5 or $21 sign on top of a $15 post in the middle of my
Well, you
backyard?
know what?
And the answer to it is, I'm gonna answer it before you cut me off, is no. And when nobody's looking in 5 years, I'm gonna rip it out of the ground and throw it in a pile.
But
So how do we make it so it sticks?
Our job is to protect the wetlands, not to be.
So is there a better alternative than a
Right,
metal
Joyce, you
sign?
just said it, our job is to protect the wetland, and if you can get a metal pole that stays on the edge of the wetland, which is what we truly are protecting, and that's not dismissing that everything up to that has an impact on it, but it's to educate people that it's there. This is what I keep going back to. If you get a sign that stays along the edge of the wetland, it informs them that they have a wetland in their property or near their property, and they can see it. It's more visible than a wet spot that some people don't understand. When there's a sign that stands up out of the ground that says edge of wetland, that makes people just by nature more careful of everything they do. And that's what the goal is for people to be educated, to be more mindful of the buffer zone. That's what some of our bylaws, I hope, are accomplishing. No, I'm not asking to change any of the rules, other than where we place the sign so it stays for the future. I could see those signs lasting 50 years.
I think we ought to have people sign that they get this, or some feedback to the board that the owner gets this. Because a lot of
Now
people.
we're creating, Joyce, and I'm not trying to cut you off. We're creating so many rules and regulations that can't be followed through with. That's what I'm trying to say.
Most people don't even see this, that are the owners.
We just had some folks in here at the last meeting that had no clue what they bought.
Yeah.
How are we gonna make somebody make them know that?
Because they didn't, they weren't given this.
Well, they weren't told, or whatever.
They do it.
And it's kind of a shame.
Yeah.
So the question is there something that will work better than this sign that's gonna last for 50 years, that people are gonna have an idea on, and they're not gonna break or move or destroy? It used to be the big boulders.
Have you seen anything in any other towns, Brandon? You go to quite a few towns.
Boulders, split rail fence, or some kind of fencing. Two most common types of barriers.
A small roll of boulders would probably make the most sense. Most of the other towns, not, some of the other towns, it's boulders, in certain cases. So when you're, these fields that you're talking about, boulders would probably be better. 30, 40-pound boulders, something that can't be picked up, it has to be set by a machine. I think that makes more sense.
Little
That's
more
an
natural,
alternative.
more natural looking.
I'd rather have the signs myself. I think they're
I
pretty.
would too, along the edge of the wetland, because I know they'll stay there a long time. And I believe in people still. I believe there'll be people that break the rules, but I believe that most people will see that sign and they'll adhere to the laws and they'll protect those wetlands like we want them to. That's what I believe.
On the wetlands, but when it's in a buffer zone field,
Those are tough
and they're
ones.
mowing it once or twice a year.
So
with a
maybe that
rotary
should be
mower,
rocks then.
They're gonna get.
That's why there's alternatives there.
It's how do we educate the people to understand what they're supposed to be doing? We get one shot at it
Well,
with
why don't we
whoever
do-
files,
why-
because they come in front of us, they have an order of conditions, they have a certificate of compliance.
They don't read this.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we not make a decision on this tonight? And why doesn't one or all of us pick this apart and rewrite this paragraph as we think it should be done, and we'll talk about it again next meeting? How's that sound?
Good idea.
All right, so why don't we do that? We'll just table this till the next meeting. Can you leave it on the agenda, Wanda? And then I'll do my best at trying to make something that makes sense. And whoever else, Mike, if you'd like to type something up to replace the wording in that paragraph. And then we'll talk about it next meeting. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I have a couple other things. Okay,
Have a ground
MACC is February 29th. If anybody's going, I need this paperwork so I can send it in. I don't know who's going, who isn't. You can just fill it out for me, as to where you wanna go. I think they're all together here. I don't know who's gonna go. You did get it online. It's in the computer. If you wanna send it back to me by computer, that's okay. But as soon as I can get it, the better, because they want their payment up front now.
Of course they do.
That's hard to do, because I have to send it in from here, and, which, it works, but. The other thing is annual report. I'm gonna give these to you. I did change some of the wording in the beginning, cause I didn't realize it was that crazy. So this, I need to turn this in February 5th, downstairs to the numbers on it that you see are all corrected. On the first page and on the second page, all the numbers you see there are all corrected numbers. It's the body of the letter that needs to be fixed. If you find something in there that we can do this at the next meeting, I'll put it on the agenda of the next meeting too. I thought I had it on this one, but I didn't, so it'll be on.
Okay. So we can look at this and,
Yeah, I'll put
Okay.
that in.
Okay, Wanda and I went to that meeting at DEP today. And Wanda did a very good job standing up and speaking. And I guess I couldn't really stand up and speak. And we were encouraged that we went because there were people there from Springfield, from Fairhaven, from all over the place. And everybody had the same comments, that to send in the certified letters would be very expensive. And some of the areas have a postage budget that they couldn't go over, and they would have to go to the town meeting to get it changed and everything. So everybody had similar comments. And evidently the DEP has an e-DEP, and everybody was complaining about that because the things on that didn't match up with the paperwork, and I think they're gonna look into that. but we talked to the circuit rider, and so she emailed Wanda back this afternoon. So she's coming, what, February 4th?
February 4th.
At 10 o'clock.
So,
So,
there's several that's gonna be here, if anybody else wants to join us, you can please
Yeah,
come in.
I'd like to go, just remind me.
The EDEP is not a very good platform in my
Sign
opinion.
that.
well, everybody was complaining about that, and they said there are changes down
I
the road with that.
I don't disagree. And if DEP can't clean it up and make it work right, then
She's
we're
gonna
not gonna
try
change anything.
to get,
But we're in the electronic age,
yeah, no, and that's why they wanna do it.
so realistically,
They gotta get
However-
on it.
they gotta get on it and we have to follow suit.
If we're
One
in the
of-
electronic age, why can't we use emails as a date? And why having us send this stuff in certified mail?
Yeah, that I
So
don't
that's
know.
what I argued the
That
point
doesn't
Well,
make any
today.
sense.
that's what they were saying is to, and if you use this EDEP, but the problem they said was, back 10 or 11 years ago, they had a company develop this, and there's a contract that limits the changes they can make.
Excellent.
So anyway, they know they have a problem with this EDEP.
I'll
and-
send everybody an email
and
when it comes closer to
Everybody
that
came
time.
up with that same thing, so that we would
Hopefully
not.
they'll hear it and fix it, cause that's just the way the world is now.
You know,
Right.
I was the first one that got up and I started the ball rolling with how much it's gonna cost all of us in these different
Right.
towns
They
to
obviously,
certify mail this stuff to them.
they need to make it easier.
When they
for the
scan it
portals.
into their computer and throw the paperwork away, that
The
frustrates me.
advantage evidently of the EDP is that it pre-fills, it auto-fills all of these things, you don't have to type it in. The other thing is that this girl from the city of Worcester was explaining how they notify people of their decisions and so forth, and they bundle everything and send it in one packet, certified mail. And so evidently she was doing things that were sort of not quite right, and she just found that out today. But the last date is the date they're gonna accept. So if somebody gets the notification on Monday and it goes to DEP on Friday, the Friday date would be the one that they start for the appeal
They've always
process.
told us that the date that I run it through our machine downstairs, the postal date is the date that starts the 10-day appeal period. And that's, with 10 days, it's only business days, does not count Saturday or Sunday. But with our 21 days that we do with our orders, that counts every day for 21 days.
So we were glad we went, so.
Yeah, it was interesting,
Excellent.
easy to find.
Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn.
A second. All those in favor?
I didn't know if Zach's original